Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, provably proving who has the most to prove in 2025.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use our code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again. And today, diving headfirst into what will certainly be a theme of this offseason and or preseason buildup to 2025 for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders. We're talking pressure to perform. We're talking things to prove. And I think whenever you consider sort of the landscape rolling into this fall, obviously you consider some guys that had a lot of attention that joined your roster, some guys that are well compensated among that group, highly touted in a lot of cases. So there's clearly between the lines things that are questions that have to be answered, things that have to be proven. And I want to get to in just a moment sort of those guys in that category. And I'm not so sure that it's all that short of a list even, because I'm having trouble kind of narrowing mine down to a top 3 or a top 5. The list just keeps getting longer. But, Chris, I also want to step outside the lines. And, of course, we take a look at the head coach. But I'm wondering if there's some other names we could offer up that maybe have even as much, if of a different variety, when it comes to pressure to perform. Maybe somebody out of the general manager's office as an example. We'll get to that in just a moment. But there's no question that here as we're getting further into Joey McGuire's tenure, Chris, that naturally – the pressure will continue to build. And now you've had the offseason investment and effort that we've all bared witness to that adds to it. I don't think anybody's shying away from it. This is what it's about. You want to be in a relevant circle, so it will come with pressure. And it seems like for the most part, they've been embracing that.
Yeah, you and I were talking about this idea of what something like this would look like as we would kind of have this conversation. And you know, I think I said to you, like, hey, man, of course Joey McGuire has pressure on him. And I've even said to you before, like, I'm trying to remember how far back it's been, but, like, man, Joey and Barron are going to bear the brunt of this thing, right, wrong, or indifferent, just because of who they are, where they've come from, the positions that they hold, whatever. And those are obvious, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. Like the head coach, that just kind of comes with the territory on expectations and with the money that you've invested, and that just comes with playing quarterback, right? So those are the easy answers on who has the most to prove, or who's going to get the blame if things don't go well. I mean, we on the same page there? Because I think that. We've had episodes about Barron where people are like, they're really a fan, or they have serious questions, or if it doesn't go well, it's going to be his fault. I mean, it's already started, and we haven't even played a game yet with this team. Can he stay healthy and all that stuff? I tend to think Barron will be just fine this year. But what if we widen the scope a bit, and if somebody were to walk up to Casey Cowan at the grocery store, Coach Cowan, who's got the most approval on this football team? And you can't say the head coach and the quarterback. Like, who would – because I got to thinking about this. Like, who would you say?
Well, I sort of first would consider, like, which category of player am I thinking? Am I thinking about a guy who's kind of around for maybe a final hoorah, or around for professional auditions and things like that as it relates to the NFL? Or do I go back to what I've already mentioned and just considering like a high price tag guy, or a guy that's come in, with a lot of conversations surrounding him? I think I'm a little more inclined to sort of go to those guys, and maybe it's just some recency bias, but some of those that have been discussed to such great lengths, whether it's somebody like David Bailey or Howard Sampson or somebody like Lee Hunter. I think those are some of the ones I really think of first, Chris, just because we have spent so much time talking about what those kinds of players can bring to the table. And whether fair or unfair, that's what surrounds them as players. And not only that, but now guys that are on the receiving end of what I would speculate to be very healthy agreements from a compensation standpoint. So that also, I think, has to in this era now be considered.
And I guarantee you, everybody that we mentioned here would likely go, absolutely, I have a lot to prove. I'm here for it. That's why it's, like I'm not shying away from that, or I will prove it, however you want to phrase it. So this is just a fun conversation to get to. One of the outside the box things to consider, which goes along the lines of your conversation, is James Blanchard and his department, because they are the ones that put a lot of these pieces in place. I mean, they got to decide, we want this guy over this guy or whatever. And I think Blanche will be the first one to tell you, we've got a tremendous amount of pressure on us. I mean, I'm trying to take this thing and help take this thing to where it's never been before. We got a healthy investment. We've told the people that gave us this investment, this is what you can expect on your return. So, and then if it doesn't happen, or like, hey, we weren't very good there. I mean, that just comes the uncomfortable part that comes with all this. I think he's one that would tell you he has a lot to prove. And he turned down Notre Dame, that just came off of a national championship game appearance. And it's the second time he's turned down Notre Dame, all to try to get this thing over the hump. And I've heard him talk in some interviews before, and he said, I would have been sick to my stomach had I left and not been a part of that getting over the hump process. I couldn't sleep at night if I would have missed out on that. So I'm rooting for you, Blanche. I hope that we're all a part of it, and he's directly involved. But that was one. There's a couple other. I mean, you could bounce around here, because my mind started to race, and I was like, oh, let me see if I can't talk you into some other people, and plead their case on most to prove. Romelo Height went from, we finally have an edge guy. We've figured, we've cracked the code. We can't rush the passer. We just went and got one of the guys that's available, and we got him. So he went from that to now he's gone from, he's not the first name anybody's mentioned. Everybody's talking about David Bailey and Lee Hunter. Romelo Height is a guy that has been to 4 different colleges in 4 years. He knows Lee Hunter from a previous stop. People will tell you he's one of the most athletic guys on the team, one of the twitchiest, needs some encouragement and structure and all that, but he led the country in pressures. He's not showing up on any of these draft lists. David Bailey is. Lee Hunter is. Howard Sampson is. Quentin Joyner is. On and on. But Romelo Height was thought to be like, okay, this guy was hand-picked. And he did. He led the country, and I think QB pressures of the Power 4 folks or whatever. It was like 30 or something. And yet we talk about a lot of the transfers, and he quickly went from top of mind awareness to now kind of blended into the meaty middle there. He's not the name that people bring up. It's the new flavor of the month. It's David Bailey.
Yeah. Which
I think in a way, David Bailey is one of the top-notch guys that he's got the least amount of proof. I think he's already thought to be an NFL prospect, and he's been all conference and all that. Romelo Height has kind of been not really able to star and all those things. So anyway, that's one. Do you want to counter? Do you have
David Bailey? I don't really have a counter. It's just interesting. The David Bailey context, I kind of felt the same about, in that it's going to be a short stay. He's already paving a path to the National Football League before his time at Tech. This is just kind of the capstone, if you will, to try and finish it off in a really great way. So I thought that could alleviate some pressure. The thing that we don't necessarily have a great handle on in these conversations that we would if we were talking on a Locked On NFL team show is the monetary figure. And that would weigh in heavily if we were talking professional sports, Chris. And some of us are just kind of rolling on with it whenever it comes to some of these college guys. But I think about that a little bit as well. But I certainly understand what you're saying there and kind of feel the same about Bailey's pressure. But, some of those guys, too, that have been on the move so frequently, while I don't begrudge them that ease of movement in this era, there has to be some pressure at some point in time also that's different than someone that's spent years in a program that's kind of different. So maybe for what you're describing there for Height.
Fair. Because I thought about, because you're kind of referencing players that have been in a program for many years. How much pressure do they have? Like, does Jacob Rodriguez have anything to prove? I don't know. Part of me would say that's just him as an example, because I did think about that linebacker position. Like, you'd have to go to either him or Ben Roberts. Jacob Rodriguez is an all-conference guy. Well, what does he have to prove? Well, I think he's still trying to prove that he has worth at the next level. I think that you could argue that it won't get any easier for him than it may be this year. And I say easy in that he is surrounded by unbelievably good, experienced talent, which should, in theory, make his job easier. Don't know if he has a lot to prove, though. Ben Roberts does. I think Ben Roberts has... he's not in the same category as Jacob Rodriguez. He doesn't necessarily have skins on the wall. He's got some good games, and I think we think highly of him. He's just solid. Can he take a next step? I'm going to go back to the portal class, though.
Hey, can I ask you something about Ben real quick? First, today's episode brought to you by Rougiette. Boys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to get Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is the next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify brain stimulation and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in only 15 minutes. If traditional options haven't worked, Rougiette might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. So head to rougiette.com/lockedoncollege and use our code lockedoncollege to get 15% off today. That's rougiette.com/lockedoncollege, RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege, and use our promo code lockedoncollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for full safety information. Hey, can I ask you something about Ben real quick?
Sure.
I mean, is it fair to say that it's no secret he needs a sort of bounce back? I don't know if I want to call it bounce back, but he didn't have the season he wanted to last year.
Yeah, I think he.
He's a super young guy, or he was. He's what? Only
and he's still got some years left. I think Ben, like, where he's better is maybe in a phone booth, and if you get him trying to chase after a running back or trying to cover somebody out of the flat or in coverage, I think that's kind of where he struggles, because he's not like the fastest. That's just, again, they're all different. All these players are different. And I think he's worked to improve that. Phenomenal kid. And he's got a nose for it. I think he would be the first one to tell you he needs to be better than he was last year. But most of those kids on defense would say the same. Sure. Because the defense wasn't very good. And whose fault was it? Was it Tim DeRuyter's fault? Was it the youth? Was it we're trying to teach them too much and they can't grasp it, and we've got too many busted coverages because we're trying to throw too much at them? Or is it because we're not fast enough, we're not athletic enough, we're not big enough up front, we can't create? I mean, who the heck knows? So everybody shoulders a bit of that blame. What if I'm gonna argue for two different offensive skill players. Both are portal additions. I'll let you decide where I go here, and I'll argue this candidate, and I guess we'll do the other one in a second, but I'll let you decide who goes first. Reggie Virgil or Quentin Joyner?
Tough selection, because I was trying to weigh these two options in my mind. both with big shoes to fill. Let's head to the programs or the spot previously occupied by the program's all-time leading rusher. Take me to the backfield, Chris.
Okay. Well, why would he have a lot to prove? Well, let me tell you. If we're putting him in this kind of conversation, this is somebody that I would suggest that Ohio State knows what they're looking for when it comes to running backs. Yes,
they've shown a track record.
I think both of their guys last year, picked in the second or third round. They've got a Ohio State wanted Mr. Joyner, and this is a player originally from the state of Texas, averaged over 7 yards a carry. It goes off to the left coast and everything. So that there's a couple of things here. One, right, wrong, or indifferent, and I think he maybe shoulders this a bit more than the two internal candidates do, just simply because he's been in college for a bit longer and maybe has a bit more street cred when it comes to game experience and whatnot. But there's something to be said about, okay, we're going to be running back by committee. However, you're the head of the committee. And, oh, by the way, we're trying to replace the school's all-time leading rusher. There's just something that comes with that, okay? The offense will be different. The scheme will be different. We don't know exactly where our bread and butter is going to come from. We don't know who we're handing it to, throwing it to when the rubber meets the road, all that stuff. He's the most likely candidate in that backfield, and I think he's probably earned that right. He's got the most experience. I think he's probably got the most upside. He's built to where he can handle the grind of it, unlike maybe a Jacoby Williams, who I don't know if you'd want to trot out there and say, hey, dude, you're built to carry it 20-25 a game. But here's why I think that I even feel stronger about saying that he has a lot to prove. And this isn't his doing. Well, maybe it is. Did you see the deal a week ago on the upcoming 2026 NFL draft from PFF?
I did. And
they did a top 5 of running backs. What was he, third?
Think so.
I think he was on the graphic, so he's clearly, but he wasn't fifth. He was the third.
He made the edit.
and I thought, I was like, whoa, because this is, and you can see there's a direct correlation into PFF and the way that they grade players and the way Texas Tech views them. You're checking a lot of boxes on the PFF stuff. I mean, people have seen Lee Hunter; they loved your defensive line. So I think when you analytically graded these players on portal guys, it's pretty clear that some of the things that you looked at are PFF. So you went PFF collecting, okay, out there, right? All the guys. So it doesn't shock me that PFF would like one of your players. I mean, go look at the tight end rankings with Terrence Carter, the D tackle rankings with Lee Hunter. But they had this was different. This wasn't like how they ranked last year in the season. This is what we project as far as running backs coming off the board next year in the draft. This coming April, I'm thinking with Quentin Joyner. I thought, shame on me, and maybe I'll get my wish, but maybe shame on me. I thought we'd get at least 2 years here with him. I didn't think this was a one and done scenario, but if you're telling me he's going to be the third running back taken next year, according to PFF, yeah, it's a one and done. And I guess in some ways, I would say, you know what? Theoretically, I'm all for it, because if he is, that means he had a hell of a year. I'll take my chances. Turn and burn, buddy. Let's roll. And if you go get picked, we'll figure it out. But that means you had a monster year and all that stuff. But that's a lot. Replacing Taj Brooks, being expected to be a potentially the lead of a committee, and then also with some draft expectations. And oh, by the way, the Buckeyes thought you were good enough, and you said, "No, man, kick rocks. I'm out. I don't want to be a part of that deal. I don't want to dot the I up there and all that stuff." I mean, there's a lot going on there with Quentin Joyner.
Yeah, no question. I'd like to hear that in the huddle also. Turn and burn on 3, ready to break, assuming anybody ever get in the huddle. I also think, Look, the two guys we'll talk about offensively in, Virgil or in Joyner, they're in this position because of production that they're kind of expected to pick up the slack on, the guys that are departing, whether Josh Kelly or Taj Brooks. One of those, though, is a program legend in Taj Brooks. Josh Kelly had a great year. He did for you what you hoped he could do for you, but Taj Brooks is in his own category. I know there's crossover there. Is there a relationship between those two, or is it just more a path that's intersected over time? I'm just wondering if there is a relationship, if that could be any advantage in kind of maybe alleviating some of that pressure.
And you're talking about Virgil and Joyner?
No. Joyner and Taj Brooks. Oh,
yeah. I mean, maybe. Yeah, I'd say that there's some potential there because, and again, so if you're wanting to argue against all the arguments that I tried to make, if you're like, okay, I'm going to push back on that. I mean, it's not apples to apples. Just because somebody creates a graphic and says he's supposed to be drafted here, that doesn't mean they're right. And you don't have to live up to that. It's also a different coach, different play calling, different scheme, all the different stuff. And so in some ways it may be unfair to like heap all of that onto a Quentin Joyner and let's just sit back and enjoy it. Again, this is just for the sake of conversation. It's just a fun to get into. But I think that you may be right there and that he may not have to shoulder all that because Taj is like, hey man, take your time, be patient, like let it come to you. You'll be good. You got help. And Taj wouldn't say this, but you'll be able to see where you're going up front. I didn't really have that luxury, especially going to the left side of my offensive line because your offensive line is going to be worlds better than what I was dealing with. Again, especially on the left side. He
probably won't say exactly that, but yeah, something along those lines.
Yes.
He casts a big shadow, but I'm just thinking maybe it's an advantage if you can consult the shadow as the one who's expected to kind of step into it. So see how it works out. The other guy, though, outside, you're trying to replace another, clutch impact guy in Josh Kelly, and that's why I think we both are feeling the same way about Virgil.
I'm gonna morph my conversation here, my argument into Caleb Douglas / Reggie Virgil for vastly different reasons. And I think you could maybe attach some of and they have a lot to prove for different reasons, different arguments to make. I'll get to Caleb in a second, but like Virgil's somebody that he was one of the first wideouts off of the market. I think people were throwing all these dollar figures around and Oklahoma was all PO'd at you. I think this may have been the player that drew the anonymous comment from the SEC player personnel folk that Texas Tech was jacking up the market. And I think this is maybe Reggie Virgil related. That's me trying to connect dots that may not be there. So I will say that. I think we weren't even sure you were going to take a wideout. I think they decided to go this route. I think one of the bigger questions, and it's not a huge question, but it is a question about their team coming into this year, is just receiver in general. Because theoretically, you've added 3 transfers to this group. One of which was your guy, but he's still a transfer back in Micah Hudson, that you thought for a period of time, the whole month of December and part of January, and who knows what that you were without him. You bring in Roy Alexander because I think you want a little more depth in the slot. But one of the bigger questions is like, can Caleb be a wide receiver 1 and can Reggie Virgil be a wide receiver 2? And I think that he's got big catch potential. I mean, and I think that you kind of looking at Reggie Virgil going, okay, you did it at that level. Can you do it at this one? Can you do it now when there's some expectation on you and we need consistency? I mean, I have some of the same questions about Caleb Douglas too. Third, I always just go to 3rd and 8. I don't know why it's always 8 yards that I'm needing on 3rd down, but that's for the sake of our argument in my conversation. I'm always going to 3rd and 8. 3rd and 8, man. Morgantown, West Virginia. Spot on the line. We're not in field goal range yet. We got to move the chains. I'm throwing it to you, Reg. Are you bringing it down for certain? because we were up in Morgantown a few years ago, and you threw it to some folks, and you had some good throws, some bad throws, but there was some catches that could have been made that weren't made, some throws that could have been made, and that kind of spiraled you a little bit. I'm going to that game because it's the last regular season game you'll play this year. But I think Reggie Virgil, and then you can even take Reggie Virgil's situation and say he not only has a lot to prove for this particular football team, but then also it's like the professional aspect of it too. Like, can you do it here? This is one of these teams' questions, but then can you do it here and prove that you are ready for primetime, that you're ready for the next level? Can you be a guy that gets invited to the combine and can, because he's got measurables, he's got some numbers, but if you go look at it, it kind of came on the scene really last year. There's not a lot there the 2 previous years. So, and I think Caleb Douglas is getting slept on by a lot of the folks in the league. I think everybody's talking about Jordan Tyson and all these other names, and I think Caleb Douglas is getting slept on. This is a guy that was a second or third team guy at the end of the last season. I think he had 900 yards receiving, but I mean, he could theoretically be a first team all conference guy if things, go correctly. And I think at some level, he's got a lot to prove too. Can he be a wide receiver 1? Is he ready for the NFL?
Well, I think it says a lot that whenever you talked about, a dream scenario, kind of including Douglas as a 1, Virgil as a 2, I was about to say, or any combination of that, because it's not even necessarily that I'm sitting here thinking, Douglas instantly slides into that spot. He's trending in that direction, but he's got to go do it for the first time. So there's sort of a lot of that going around, I guess, when we talk about some of these positions. I feel like we've covered a pretty complete sort of look at what's happening on the field. We mentioned James Blanchard as a wild card too to maybe consider, just because of how much influence and conversation has been there. We know influence for him and his office and his staff, and how much conversation has surrounded that with interviews and some of the high profile suitors elsewhere that have been turned down. But I guess I'll just circle back to the beginning before we get out of here, Chris. I do think if I'm allowed to just have a totally blank canvas, nobody is ruled out that I can mention, and it may just be like muscle memory, instinct to go this route. I do think I'm still going straight back to a head coach or a quarterback going into the year and talking about, here are the guys who have really got to meet the street, so to speak, and specifically that head coach. There's been a lot to rally around as far as what he represents when it comes to a figurehead for the program. And as we've talked about before, there has been proof of performance on the field as well. But you're trying to take the next step, and maybe the hardest step, to actually get into a hardware contending category. You sort of sniffed it last time around. But some bitter losses kept you from being where you wanted to be. So it's kind of hard still. We played this game where we said, if we're not mentioning a head coach, we're not mentioning a quarterback, but if it's no holds barred, it's hard not to go right back to maybe one of those two guys.
And I think Joey and Barron would probably say they have a lot to prove to themselves. That they would, again, this just comes with the position that you hold.
Yeah.
When you are a quarterback with all the things going on here and you're trying to do something that hadn't been done and you're trying to stay healthy, you're trying to push it forward, you got a bunch of big-time players around you, of course there's pressure on you. And there's going to be doubters. There's going to be people that support you and believe in you, and it's a mixed bag. If you get to the promised land, if you make it to Arlington, we'll just say that, Barron will have been a big reason why. If you don't get there, Barron will have been a big reason why, I think. And if he gets there, part of it will be he won't want to focus on that. He'll be like, we still got ways to go. Like, just getting to Arlington, we still got some games going here. Like, but he will feel I think there's a certain level of achievement there that he will be, because he's not stupid. He knows that there are people that doubt. I think he's a lot like, because Cody Hodges was his mentor growing up and at the Air It Out camps. Barron has got a little. Remember the conversation we were having about Graham Harrell recently about the double birds. You were on the first date with the sweet young lady that you dropped a few weeks after that, and
your words, not mine.
But Graham always had some spice. He always had. There's this competitiveness that he had, and he was really good. But he grit his teeth a little bit. Barron's got some of that in him too. Nobody's been more frustrated that he hasn't been able to stay healthy and that he's dealt with this or that than Barron. But Barron hasn't complained about his offensive line. Barron hasn't been, he hasn't stood up there and told everybody, yeah, man, I'm ailing, but I'm just trying to push through. He hasn't mentioned any of those as excuses. Nobody, knew that he couldn't even get in the weight room last year. He couldn't practice in the middle of the weeks, a couple of years ago, all that stuff, right? We've covered all that, but I just think there'll be a level of, like I showed everybody, and I'm here for it, and I'll be the first one to go give him a fist pump, and it may, he'll do it so hard it may hurt my hand, but that's just kind of who he is. And then with Joey, he'll be the first one to tell you, yes, I have a lot to prove. Yes, this is what I'm signing up for. I understand it comes with the job, but even more so because of all the things that have come with this program that he has helped with. Again, he didn't ask for a $250 million renovation, but he certainly wasn't turning it down. He didn't ask for them to go spend, $20 million or whatever it was over their rev share. And by the way, people think that it's a $55 million football team. I wish people would read better. It's not $55 million football team. That's the total, athletic department wide. What was spent on salaries and everything like that they have, not just football. So, anyways, whatever. That's an aside. But Joey, he wants to be a part of that, and I think he would be the first one to tell you, I'd rather be here than somewhere that's just like, hey man, you think we can get to a bowl game this year? I don't know, man. We're going to try. No, that's just not where he's at, and he's okay with that.
Which is where it was when he kind of showed up, just trying to get a baseline pulse back to the program.
I completely agree. Yes.
He'll be a victim of his own making, like all successful people are, because now he's up the ante, given some of what they've done. And here we go. The expectations are upped as well as you roll into another year. Still everything to prove. I mean, if you are not someone wrestling with a title in your trophy case this offseason, then I guess you have got something to prove again in 2025. And that includes us. Can we be a title contending type of podcast, or when the lights are brightest, the stakes the highest, do we fall by the wayside? I don't think so, but I'm thinking about it. That's why we're getting some extra reps in, Chris.
And I would love to know. I had Howard Sampson down. I had Lee Hunter down. I could have argued. I would love to know from our folks that pay attention to this program if they have ideas on somebody that has the most to prove. Anyway, it is
kicker. Reginald Fairfield. What's his name? I forget.
Upton Bellenfant.
Bellenfant.
Yeah. Maybe there's a coach somewhere on the staff. I mean, I guess you could argue Zarnell Fitch have a lot to prove. Because if everybody's got this D line, like DJ
IU, you got some shiny toys.
I was about to say it better be good, right? But that just comes with it. All good. We've wasted enough of everybody else's time. Keep hope alive, people. We'll talk to everybody next time. As we have a lot to prove, Calvin and I daily. So we'll come back and try to prove something tomorrow.
That's right. We're operating with a chip on our shoulder. Daily, we stay pissed off for greatness. Chris wants you to read better. So go work on that as well in between episodes, and subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the Everydayers and the Matador Mob for being out there every day. Hit the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks as always for the time, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.